Hi guys and welcome to Safe Diving. So one of you asked if I could do a list of scuba diving specialties, kind of which ones are worthwhile, which ones are essential, and which are just kind of a waste of time. Now, Divers Ready actually did a list like this a while back, and I imagine that my list will be pretty similar to his, to be honest. I mean, we're both instructors, we've both been teaching for a while, but let's see if there are any differences. So pretty much all training agencies have their core courses that teach you the basics and kind of build you up from there. They build up your experience, sort of going deeper and further. At a certain point, you can divert down the professional route so that you can start teaching new divers, but any time after your very first scuba diving course, you can start branching off with different specialties, because scuba diving is less linear than some other sports, and there are just loads of different avenues and ways of scuba diving, and it would just be impossible to include all of these teachings into the core courses. They just take forever, and it would just put some people off scuba diving if they had to sit through every single specialty just to get in the water. Now, whenever I do a live Q&A, one question that often crops up is how many cert cards I have myself. And this comes because you usually get a cert card after every sort of specialty course that you complete. Only there isn't a correlation between how many cert cards you have and actually being a good diver. Now, when I go diving, I bring one, maybe two relevant cert cards with me. I mean, no one's ever going to ask to see your search and recovery cert card. But for diving experience, it's not as simple as just throwing money at a problem. And there are countless specialties out there. It's actually a joke amongst professional divers. There's probably a specialty for that. Because and now I'm going to focus purely on PADI right now, but the rest of this list that I'm going to talk about is actually going to be multi-agency. But if you're a PADI instructor and you're happy to do most of the work, then you can literally write your own specialty for anything. I mean, there's a specialty for Santi dry suits, where you learn about Santi dry suits. Nothing else, just that. But outside of the really central specialties that I'm going to talk about here, there are just tons of other unique specialties that I'm just going to skip over, to be honest, because there are just so many of them to list. And all of these recommendations have to be taken with a pinch of salt, because not all divers are the same. And whilst I'd be happy for some divers to just work out how to deploy a DSMB all by themselves, some divers could do with some proper professional training and supervision. So this is quite a tricky list for me, but I'll set these out for a pretty competent scuba diver who knows their limits. One of the newer groups of specialties that's evolving is about adaptive teaching and getting people with disabilities into the water so that they can experience scuba diving. And many groups are actually using scuba diving as therapy. For most divers, this probably isn't worth doing unless you plan on helping divers at one stage in your career. If you're just in your diving for fun and you're not thinking of teaching, then I wouldn't really bother, to be honest. If you are thinking about going down the professional route, then this could be a great way to stand out from the crowd. If a dive centre is looking for a new instructor or a guide, then they have two similar applicants. The one that's trained on adaptive techniques is better for them, and it's also going to be better for you to think about different ways to get people in and out of the water. But for most scuba divers, you can just skip this one. Altitude diving is very rare. Most scuba diving takes place at sea level because, that's where the water is. So unless you live up in the mountains and your only dive site is up there with you, or you're planning one particular dive well above sea level, then you can skip this one. It is important to know how the shift in altitude affects your decompression, but 99% of divers won't really need to know this. More of a token course, really. It's good to know about shark conservation and what's going on in the world, but this won't get you a job in that world or count towards very much. If you want to donate money to the charity, then just go ahead and do that. But for the course, skip. I'd like to think that most divers can pick up most of this course from just being on a boat a few times. You'll never be asked for a boat cert card before they let you on board. I wouldn't worry about it that much. I mean, I've never done a boat specialty. Spot on buoyancy is an essential skill that every single diver should have before they're even released into the open ocean. Ideally, it should be a skill that you learn from your primary course, but there's simply not enough time for that. Buoyancy is learned through diving and proper weighting. This can be taught in a course, but you can also learn it by just focusing on your weighting a bit more and spending some time in the water. It doesn't have to be the ocean. In fact, it's better if it isn't the ocean, because you're less likely to damage the reef by bumping into it, or yourself by bumping into it. But just spending time in a deep enough swimming pool will get your body used to your buoyancy. So no, it's not an essential, it's just a substitute for actual experience. CAVERN is your introduction to overhead environments. If you never plan to do any cave diving, then you can skip this one. If you do plan to go into overhead environments, then it's essential. You can't skip over this and just kind of learn how to cave dive by yourself. That's never going to happen, and the risks are just way too big. It is interesting, and you learn a lot about tanks, valves, pressure differentials, but for most divers, nah. It's not really essential nor worth a look, to be honest. If you're going to work at a dive centre, then yeah, it can be a nice idea, because it's better to have someone who actually knows what they're doing if something goes wrong whilst filling a tank. But for most divers, nah, skip it. This kind of goes in with the shark conservation. It's not essential. If you're passionate about it, then you'll probably already know most about it, and how to be careful around the reef anyway, so skip. You'll start to learn more about what happens to your body as you go down deeper. So if your plans are to venture deeper than most, then yeah, this one is kind of important. But for most divers, then you can probably kind of skip this if you're not going deep. But if depth really is your passion, then kind of set your focus on tech maybe. Nah, dives with a DPV in my experience are pretty rare, and they're not that complicated to figure out. Sure, you have to pay attention to your ascent rates, but even if you own your own DPV, it's probably not even worth doing the course. It can be good fun though if you've never tried a DPV before, but otherwise, skip. I've never done a drift specialty. If you can deploy a DSMB, you can look where you're going so you don't bump into things, and plan kind of where you're going to be based on current so that surface support can pick you up, then you should be fine. If you can't figure out how a drift hook or how to act in moving water so that you don't get lost at sea, then yeah, maybe you do need this course, or maybe you just need to stay away from fast moving water. DRYSUIT depends on where you dive and what kind of diving you'll be doing. If you dive somewhere cold, then it's a no-brainer. Whilst you don't have to do the course in full per se, it is important that you get some kind of training to dive in a dry suit. It's not as simple as diving in a wetsuit, so you do need to learn how to dive one safely. But if you're not planning in diving in a cold waters or extended periods under the water, then you can skip this one. This should really be a fundamental skill by now. Training will help you be better and safer at deploying a DSMB, and every single diver should have their own on them on every single dive and know how to use it properly. Do you need an actual specialty to teach you that? I didn't. Just give it a go somewhere safe and work as a buddy pair the first few times until you can manage both the reel and the buoy. Learn how to do it, but maybe skip the specialty. The dive boat is a safer place with more divers who can administer oxygen in an emergency. Is it an essential skill that every single person should know? No. This is one of those that you should do, but you usually sort of learn this in rescue anyway, so just kind of do the core rescue course and you'll learn that anyway. Equipment specialist, Nah, just kind of look after your gear and get it serviced. Equipment specialist doesn't mean that you can service your own gear, it just means that you understand how it works and how to care for it a bit better. Just skip the course and just look after your stuff and get someone who knows what they're doing to service it. Not essential. It is nice being able to identify and work out what you're looking at in the water or what you've seen, but it's not essential. Just buy a local fish guide. If you're going to upgrade to a full face mask, then it is pretty important to do some kind of training. I've been using one for a while before I'd actually done any kind of training, so you can work them out. They're not rocket science, but the training will make it safer and get you to run some drills, so it's less of a shock if something goes wrong. Skip this one unless you're planning on investing in a full face mask. Whilst it's not essential for every diver, if you even think about going anywhere near ghost gear, and definitely if you plan on collecting any of it, some kind of course teaching you how to collect ghost gear is pretty important. Many divers could probably collect small bits of ghost gear, but it can be inherently dangerous. I mean, the main reason why we hate ghost gear is that it catches and kills unsuspecting marine life, which includes scuba divers. If you're planning on collecting more than just the odd bit of fishing line that you find on the bottom, then yeah, I'd sign up for a course. Same as CAVERN and cave. If you're never planning on diving under ice, then I'd never bother. If you are though, it's essential. Master Diver is different from Dive Master. Master Diver usually means that you've done just a bunch of specialties. It's kind of rubbing your own ego. You don't learn anything extra, so I'd skip this one because this one actually tells professional divers something about you, but not what you think it tells them. Most divers today are actually multi-level divers anyway. This is a bit of an old-fashioned course and your dive computer does most of this for you anyway. This course was made for when we still dived from rigid tables. I'd save the money for this course and put it towards an actual dive computer, so skip. It is easy to get turned around in the water, and learning how to use a compass and other navigation techniques is important, but I wouldn't say it was an essential course for you to do. Just kind of spend some extra time before every dive looking at the dive site map properly and take note of which way is north so you know which direction you're facing at all times as long as you've got your compass. Not essential in my books if you can figure out how to turn on a torch, although I have seen this combined with limited visibility, which is quite important. Here in the UK we just call it diving, but learning how to dive when you have limited visibility is quite important. It is very easy to get separated and turned around in poor visibility. It's not an essential course by any means if you're confident in the water and can actually handle yourself, but if you struggle in just clear water, then yeah, maybe this course is worth looking at. This is probably the biggest essential one for all divers. When NITROX was actually first being introduced, as with many things it seems, it was actually called the devil's gas by some, and many actually feared it, but NITROX actually makes your diving safer so that you can stay down longer. However, you do need to learn how it affects you as you go down deeper, so a NITROX course is essential, and it's a good foundation for diving deeper and just understanding what's going on more as we dive. Same as compressor operator really. If you're not planning on filling tanks, skip it. If you are, then this one is arguably more important because compressed oxygen is pretty dangerous and blending gases is a bit of an art at times. It can be handy to practice your underwater photography with someone so that they can give you some tips on how to frame shots and kind of color correct your shots, but it's not something that you can't learn for yourself with enough practice. It might just take some time. Now that we have digital cameras, you can take as many shots as you like and just review what does work and what doesn't. So kind of skip it unless you're just kind of starting out and maybe want to cut a corner and get some professional advice. Public safety is like ghost gear. If you're not planning on doing it seriously, then it's really not worth it. It will be interesting, and it's a more serious take on search and recovery, but unless you're in an area where you can actually use the ticket professionally, or you're going to use these skills in your professional life, then I wouldn't really bother. I mean, the police and fire department, they're not going to give you a phone call on your day off asking for your help. This is quite a good one. Scuba diving isn't all about seeing pretty things underwater, and search and recovery will introduce you to the practical side to scuba diving. You'll learn about searching procedures, which is best done in just the worst visibility you can find. I mean, if you can literally see what you're looking for from the entry point, then you're just wasting your time swimming lines pretending not to see it. But learning about lifting items and the buoyancy is very interesting, and it will set a good foundation for ghost gear recovery if you ever want to get involved in something like that. This one will make you a better, well-rounded scuba diver. While it may sound like it teaches you just how to dive by yourself, the course will actually teach you to get yourself out of trouble. So yeah, I'd like to see more divers being a bit more self-reliant, even if they don't actually dive by themselves. This course will teach you more about advanced dive practices. If you have your heart set on doing a course to improve your own diving in general, then Self-Reliant is probably going to be the best. Get ready to kind of reorganize all of your stuff though, and maybe buy a few new bits of gear as well. Yeah, side mount is good to teach you how to mount stage cylinders and kind of route hoses properly. If you're planning on moving to tech or rebreathers, then this is a good foundation for diving with multiple gases. And if you're more comfortable with side mounting cylinders, then you'll transition to tech diving much easier. Meh. If you're passionate about the underwater ecosystem and how marine life interacts, then you probably know a lot of this anyway. So just, I don't know, watch Blue Planet and just skip this course. Yeah, sure, if you're investing in expensive video equipment and the lighting as well, then it is good to know what you're doing. But this kind of course can help you cut some corners, much like the photography, to really make your shots stand out and look amazing. Skip it if you're not going to take your videos that seriously, you just want to take the odd one on holiday. But if you want to improve things, then yeah, go for it. You can see a lot of a wreck from the outside. I mean, wreck diving without a guide on the inside is as dangerous as cave diving, so it's important to know how to navigate the inside properly. If you're planning on penetrating some wrecks, then yes, it's best if you do it properly and spend some time learning how to do it safely. Yeah, this one is pretty important. That all being said, you should never feel guilty or put off from doing a specialty. If you've done one of these or you're thinking about signing up for one of them, then you're obviously passionate about doing it, so just go for it. For some scuba divers, specialties are good to get them back into the water and keep them in the water. It gets to a point where it's less about just getting another cert card and more about just spending some time with professional divers and just gaining some experience. Not just swimming around though, it's actually getting stuck in and actually doing something. So specialties aren't awful. For me, to build a better diver, I'd recommend NITROX, side mount, ghost gear, and probably Self-Reliant, maybe in that order. If you're passionate about a certain type of discipline though and doing it by yourself, then go for it, why not? But don't just sign up for an ice diving course if you hate the cold. But what do you guys think about specialties? Do you think that at a certain point your own experience can supersede some of them, or should they become more obligatory so more people are trained properly? Let's discuss specialties below in the comments. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this video. On my channel, I upload videos every single week all about how to become a better scuba diver. Now, I've been working in and around the diving industry for a very long time now, and I have a lot of advice that I can help you out with. So if you need any help or advice with anything to do with scuba diving, just let me know in the comments below and subscribe to my channel, because I'll probably make a video all about it to help you out. So you can click here to check out one of my latest these how-to videos to upgrade your equipment and your diving, and click here to check out one of my scuba diving advice videos. Thank you for watching, and of course, safe diving.